All right, traders should be good to go here. Welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our weekly workshop, Traders Talk. Once again, my name is Josh Levitan. Great to see all of our students and members alike just here inside our live trading room. Kathleen, Andrea, Michael, Leda, Grant, all of us here just joining us. Got about 112 of us, 113 of us joining live this Monday afternoon, I guess morning, wherever you may be residing here, at least today. Great to have all of us there, all of us back on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. All of us on X, social media, at least down below. Popping up lower left at Cyber Trading U. If you're new to our channel, new to our YouTube, social media, etc., we're live every day, Monday to Friday, morning, afternoon. But here, I do a live workshop every Monday at noon. So we're going to break down a bunch of different trades, at least here for you right now. Just make sure to follow and subscribe right to our YouTube channel, though, at Cyber Trading U. Do yourself the service, at least, of doing that. Make sure that you could better follow the big money out there within the market. I just came off a marathon of coaching sessions from students earlier today, working with different students privately, one-on-one. I did have a trade review to go over on this stock here, at least VIAV. We'll get to that actually in just the latter part of this session, at least here. Nice little swing trade here. One of my students, Sandy's in right now. So let's go over, though, to a couple stocks that we had this morning from pre-market. And I know that a lot of us here want to talk about the SPY and talk about Powell, what's ahead with the DOJ, Trump, blah, blah, blah. Hey, we're going to get into that as well. Stay tuned. But if you're Brad, Michael, Leda, Roseanne, any of our students, Uma, inside our trading room from earlier today, Anna, Nabil, Wendy, Scott, any of us here, hey, we post our pre-market watch list for you early in the morning, including this stock. Not this stock. I'm getting my dyslexia kicking in now. EVTV, this one. EVTV, not EVLV. This one. So Envirotech Vehicles, right? Hey, we've never traded this stock before, or at least if we did, I can't tell you the last time that we did. That just leads me to tell you, this stock is pretty much going to be a pump and dump. This is likely going to be some small cap, low float stock that has been beat up for a long, long, long time. So when a stock is getting beat up for a long, long time, folks, Andrea, Leda, Grant, Nabil, who's winning that battle? Who's winning that battle when a stock is getting beat up, right? We know who. I want you to say it there quick for me. The sellers, right? So why should we trust this thing? Meaning, is this some swing trade? No. This thing's probably going to be back down 30, 40% by tomorrow. You can't trust this stock as far as you could throw it. Now, when you say that, though, that doesn't mean it can't be an excellent day trade stock. So whatever news came out on this damn thing earlier today, EVTV, maybe we even posted about it earlier this morning. Yeah, some news came out this morning. They received a $100 million worth of government purchase orders. They advanced $200 million in regional pipeline, blah, 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 for the AI infrastructure expansion. Hey, we've seen these types of headlines come out too for a lot of different small cap stocks. And look at where those stocks are at today. They're not always great swing trades, but they typically could make for great day trades. All right. Well, before we go into this review, real brief, this is easy on my eyes. I figure it's going to be easy on your eyes when I ask you this. And I go over this also every week here in Traders Talk as well. It's just all part of the process, folks. What time's reversal time? What time do we expect a lack of momentum? What time do we expect momentum to be lost on a lot of these trades going up, 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 up? Well, I guess it's 7:30, but maybe Pacific time. 10:30 Eastern, right? Give or take 15 minutes. So 10:30 Eastern, give or take 15 minutes there. Hey, by 10:40, this thing had topped off. So is it so surprising that it fell all the way back down and topped off around reversal time? No, we teach that. That's actually not just not surprising. That's just expected. A lot of our students, including myself, we got out on this trade collectively before 10:30 or just right at that point. Now, that's at least for the market open session. We saw the stock begin to pop as early as 7 o'clock when news first came out. Most of us are at our desks by 8 o'clock Eastern to try and trade pre-market at that point. Okay, well, hey, this was some dirt cheap stock early this morning. Right out the gate, what common set of levels should we be seeing the largest, biggest, most, major iceberg orders at? For, a dirt cheap stock like this, I mean, at a baseline minimum, we should be focused around where, folks? What sets of prices typically? Yeah, Uday right out the gate, 50-cent levels and whole number levels, right? So obviously 50 cents, but more or less $1. So when this first came up to $1, it's already up 100+% from whatever pop this was in the morning here. I would not be expecting such a clean move immediately for any stock that already is pumped up, 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 and it's about to test a major resistance for the first time. I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to be taking that trade. Now, that doesn't mean it can't pop later on, nor does that mean it can't flip into support. But at least the first time it's coming into this resistance, I would not be as gun ho about it because it's already popped up so much already, and it's the first test. Now, the more it keeps poking and poking and poking that level, that is what presents the first opportunity to buy the breakout. Bill, Charles, Kath, Uday, Sam, all of us here live, Deborah, everyone else here, Sonia, you got Ron, you got a lot of us here. You know my catchphrases. My best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. So at least, hey, the more that this is nipping and testing this big resistance level, I'm figuring that it's going to weaken it, and then eventually it's going to break out, lead to a nice move. So easy to say in hindsight, but hey, right around 8:30 in the morning, 8:32, this would have been a pretty ideal moment to try and take this trade, to buy the breakout of it at least, right? All right, well, hey, it broke above resistance. It ran. This is a 10% move, folks. I don't know if you realize this. Stock went from $1 to $1.10, right? You might not think that's such a big move. It's like, oh, it's only 10 cents. Yeah, for Tesla, that's not a big move. For Palantir, for Iron, which we'll get into next, not a big move. For a 10-cent push off $1, that's pretty significant. That's a 10% move. That's a break above resistance and a run. So what are we expecting to see resistance flip into then? When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs from it after, the first time it comes back down to it, I would feel most confident in that resistance flipping into. Now, this is all easy to say in hindsight, but this is all easy to kind of go over because, hey, this is the same process that we follow every day in our room. This is the same process I at least want you to follow every day in a room if you're not already. Otherwise, we go over it monthly in class. We cover it weekly here in our Traders Talk workshop. This is nothing new, right? We can't reinvent the wheel with trading, with any strategy, with accomplishing anything in life. If there's already a pretty high performing strategy to get the job done, then hey, maybe there's something new that could develop, but my intent is to not reinvent the wheel. My intent is to keep things super simple, in fact, actually. So more or less, it's just a matter of using the principles that we teach in phase one, resistance getting tested, tested, tested. All right, well, eventually it's going to lead to a breakout. When a stock is going up, 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 and resistance is being tested over and over and over and over and over, and gets broken through, who's winning that battle, folks? The buyers, absolutely. So at least by the time it's testing resistance the first time here, yeah, I'm not jumping in. I wouldn't think about jumping in. I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to jump in on the first test. But I figure the more that that level keeps getting poked, tested, nipped, it's getting attacked by buyers. So eventually, you got to figure it's going to lead to a clean move. Now, that might sound vague. That might sound abstract a bit where, well, how many level tests do you need? Is there a number? There's no fixed number. I've seen stocks be a stubborn pain in the ass at resistance, and it takes 5, 6, 7 different attempts. And I'll be there at the right place just at the wrong time. I'll take a loss, but I'm not going to take it on the first attempt because I'm expecting that to be the strongest. And naturally, the more that it's kind of getting tested over a smaller concentration, that's where I feel better about the breakout. If I miss the breakout, it's already running without me. I'm not jumping in. We got to at least wait to either see what the next resistance is, wherever it is. Otherwise, can this flip into support? That's all I'm thinking about. That's all we're doing here. Now, we can go into Bookmap. We can figure out from Bookmap side of things where we have our next resistance level, where we have our next big iceberg, etc. Might be 150, right? What I want to do, well, not that. what I want to do is show you a call out I was making to everyone here in our trading room early this morning. This was the first thing that I posted inside our trading room pretty much by the time I logged in, because I want to help you out. I'm trying to give a game plan to students like Sam and Scott and Ray and a lot of us here. Well, hey, immediately when I saw this thing moving in pre-market and I logged in, right before 8:30. Well, shortly afterwards, I said, I don't trust this. It's going to dump at some point. Well, hey, it's actually at the high of the day right now as we're talking. So, perhaps this has more strength in it than I first thought at 8:36 a.m. But it did dump around 10:30, so I got that part right. It's just to say, if the trend keeps up for the time being, these prices here, 137, 154, that would be strong historical levels. That would be resistance in this case if tested. So that's more or less just going back on the daily chart here for this EVTV trade. You can see this wick right here, more or less just right around that 137 number. I think it did top off right here, 137 clean on December 15th. But more or less the combination of this wick, that to me led to be a pretty clean looking level. And then after that point, if this really wanted to keep pushing up, I think I did look at the weekly chart. And that's where, yeah, you could see this pretty evidently. This was clean support back from 2000 or May of last year, 155, 156, 155, just more or less a consistency of bars. This is on the weekly chart for that matter too, so each candle's 1 week, but a number of consistencies right around that 155-ish. So that's where I was telling you, we had a couple of different prices that you could use as targets. It was that 137 at first, but then otherwise, like 154, 155-ish, right there. So that takes me to where we're at now, and at least from earlier here too. So on this trade, I ended up jumping in. I think I took it. Let me double check on this. There we go, right at 120. So I ended up taking this trade a little bit later into the morning here. I got filled at 120 as my entry price. But let me show you at least what happened there. We still got the higher high and the move up. So I ended up taking half my trade out. Or no, I got all out. I sold everything at 135 even. I left some money on the table. I could have done a bit better on this trade, but it was still at least about, solid 15 cents on double size there. But more or less, I wanted to at least get some money on the board right around reversal time, take some money and run. All right, so 120. Why 120? How did that become a level? Well, at least with looking at Bookmap, there was an orange line that showed here at least throughout the early to mid-morning. Wasn't out there in pre-market, but it was here going into 10 o'clock. It broke over that line. Now, that's just me basically saying the more that we keep seeing resistance getting poke, 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 test, 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 it's going to lead to that better move. Look at this column here on the far right, right? Doesn't that stick out like a sore thumb right at that 120? So 120 was not like a huge level early in the morning here. Pre-market, it wasn't. This was not any respectable level for me in pre-market. That's where at 8:30 I was calling out levels more from the daily chart, the weekly chart. But at least going into 10 o'clock, 10:15, 10:30, this, between the CVP spike, between the orange red line here, I could likely adjust the volume dots and show the big green balls, the dots right at that price. I'm sure I could do that there for you. Just more or less, though, a few different reasons for me to think, all right, with higher lows and it keeps nipping and testing that area, we could get a better move. So, obviously I wish I held on a lot longer, would have made me a hell of a lot more money, but I jumped onto another trade. I felt confident getting out where I did because, well, it was a clean entry. With a clean entry, at least comes a profit. So I feel pretty good, at least taking some money off the table. In a shoulda, coulda, woulda moment, maybe I should have taken half out instead of all of it out and, kept 1,000 shares left. But, hey, we don't think in hindsight like that, right? We can't directly think that way. We could review and study in hindsight, but we can't be shoulda, coulda, woulda and be the perfect trader. So, if we teach that reversal time is around 10:30, maybe I could have tried to squeak out a few more minutes on the hour there to get me to 10:30 in the morning. But listen, it was a 15-cent profit on 2,000 shares. I'm pretty damn happy with what I got. And that's all that matters, right? I think that as traders in the very moment when a stock pops higher without you, I think that we always like kind of complain and rip our hair out and beat ourselves up a hell of a lot more than we actually compliment ourselves and give ourselves the good old Barry Horowitz, as I say, and pat ourselves on the back, basically, right? Pat ourselves on the back, say good job, and that's it, right? It was money that I didn't have before the morning started. So that's how I consider it. Now, in a more shoulda, coulda, woulda moment in terms of strategy and entry, hey, I'm going to have you answer the same question that you just answered for me a little while ago, but it all results back to how I trade. This broke above a resistance and it ran. What are we expecting a resistance to flip into? So, maybe at like 11:30 in the morning, if I was like aggressively hunting for a new trade, oh, this would have been like taking candy from a kid. I mean, like in hindsight, you could say that because it worked out. But if we were commenting on 137 being a historical resistance and, well, hey, it smashed resistance and flew. So what am I expecting at least the first time it comes down to that price? I would think support. Now, if it doesn't bounce, if it just retests over and over and keeps nipping this as support, probably going to break it, probably going to smash lower, and that's it, right? Real quick, I had a tiny profit on this trade early in the morning today. Bill or William C, he was in on it too. He had a good exit. He had a nice look exit. I wanted a lot more of a bounce on it. Didn't get it. Hey, what time's reversal time, right? So this ended up actually reversing conveniently enough right around that point. But I was looking for a better build of support sooner. And no pun intended, sooner, get that? Haha. No, but seriously, more imminently, I was expecting a build of support on this soon trade from this 1180 price, I think I wrote. Started off good, real good, but it came scorching earth back down. And you know that if it's not going to build better the way that you would expect it to, then better to get out some profit than no profit. Better to get out some profit than a big loss, right? So it is just to mention, not every trade's going to work out perfectly and make that expected big move shortly after. But in the case of this, oh my God, if I was more aggressive hunting for a trade around this 11:30, I was on back-to-back coaching sessions with students, and actually I'm in on a trade right now that's holding up pretty well still, the IREN, and we'll get to that trade next as well. But more or less with the EVTV, oh, this would have been taking candy from kid. Under and over, you set your stop right below here. Thankfully, it doesn't break lower, so you're safe. But this level held, higher low, pushing back up. And actually now we're getting back up and above the 150, what was it, 156, 155? Kind of just said 156, 155, that area, right? That was the other price that we had said, right? These are the two prices. 137, and we kind of said 154, 155-ish. That's pretty much it. All right, well, hey, the more that this keeps nipping and testing this resistance here at 155 or whatever, well, if this wants to go up more later on, if we're going to be goal-oriented and look for the next resistance to get tested, which, by the way, looking at Bookmap, I want everyone to answer briefly for me. Where's our next resistance here on Bookmap? What's our next level here on this trade? And if you're on YouTube, if you're on social media, hey, would love to hear from you as well. We got students already answering correctly here in our room, but want to hear from everybody on social as well. Where do you see the next red-orange line across this page? What do we got? And, hey, maybe you could assume this because it's kind of like our North Star when it comes to looking for these iceberg orders on cheap stocks. But whole number levels typically should have those big numbers. Well, here we go, right at $2. Orange line. And that's been out there since, well, at least 11 o'clock in the morning. That's been out there pretty nicely since like 10:57, 11 a.m. Well, now it's 12:30. So it's been out there for a long time. Why is that order out there, right? What's the point? Well, the more that this stock keeps building upward, and if it could eventually flip this into support, I'd say then there's at least a chance for this to try and build up to 2. And that kind of takes us to this very point right now because, hey, we got to be patient. If every stock ran perfectly across the whole morning or across a whole afternoon, every single day of the week, every single month of the year, you and I together would not have a need to be doing any of this here. You know what I mean? We would only basically have CTU as like a networking group just so we can kind of chit chat. But trading is not always that easy, right? We would have our own islands, I'm sure, mansions and acres and acres and acres of land. Well, I'm sure a few of us here do like Grant and whatnot. But just to say though, that we'd all have our own massive properties and we'd be living the good life if trading was always that perfect. It's not. And that's where, with patience, typically comes reward. So, with this shaking around this 155, 154 area since the morning started, hey, if this wants to get up to the next resistance, let's just have this thing play nice. No, if this wants to keep testing resistance and breaking and nipping and stabbing above resistance, that's cute and all. But if this wants to go up higher, then I'd feel at least more confident now with this trying to hold better over 155, 154 as a support level. So that takes us right now here. It pushed back above it, bar after bar, now after bar. It's really trying. It's actually putting up a pretty valiant effort right now. So, hey, there's still a chance for this to try and make that better move. Now, though, with what I said, though, in the very beginning, I think even in the same post, aside from the levels here, it's not even just the levels that I'm writing out to you, but at the end of it all, I don't really trust this stock. I feel like it's still going to dump. So what if this doesn't play nice? What if this doesn't hold support where it needs to? Then throw it out the window, then ditch it. We're going to find another stock that's going to go up 244% coming up. Seriously, I mean that. This stock is up a lot right now, percentage-wise. 240%. It was up over 100% before it even broke above $1 this morning, right? So just to tell you, there is a chance that this can go up higher. We do see stocks go up 500, 1,000, 2,000% in one day. Don't believe me? Hey, for any of my students here, you do believe me because you've seen this stock. But for any on social media, this stock ORBS made a 2,000% move in one day or overnight. So it is just to tell you, those things can happen, but you can't really have like great confidence in a stock making a 2,000% move because we just don't really see stocks make that type of move as frequent. Like it could happen, but not so often. So how do we get this to play out? Well, it needs to play nice. So that's just where I'm pointing out still here. Like this isn't so bad. It's kind of shaking around this area a small bit. If this can break below like 150, then I'd say it's definitely over with. If it still builds higher lows and holds over this area throughout the early afternoon pretty well, there actually is still a shot then for this to try and bust a higher high. But again, it's got to play nice. It's got to keep with higher lows. If it just breaks down here, then it's all for naught. I was asked from a student just beforehand, just before we started coaching, before we started Traders Talk, rather. I was on a private coaching with a student. This is definitely not a coaching. I do a lot more in the private coaching with students, but I'll just say that I was asked from a student, hey, like, do you set stops? What's your plan with setting stops? So absolutely, we definitely do. That's a cardinal rule. If you're not setting your stops on your trades, then I guess you're telling me you don't set your seatbelt on in your car when you drive about 50, 60, 80 miles per hour down the expressway then, right? Certainly, you have your seatbelts on when you drive, right? And I know that. I compare it to be the same thing. When we're risking not necessarily our physical lives, we're kind of behind a computer screen right now, right? But we are risking our fiscal lives. Get it? Get it? Fiscal, like more of our monetary lives. Well, hey, we better put that theoretical seatbelt on. So that is a huge talking point I cover in class, phase 2 of our stock course, setting stops, taking profits, actually coming up even phase 1, 2026. We're going to be doing a lot more of that there. Point being, hey, that's why they make seatbelts in cars, right? To prevent us from getting really hurt. So if this does not make a higher high, and if it does make a lower low here, then we take a tiny loss. It's all right. A tiny loss is okay in the grand scheme of it all. We're never going to make money if we're too hesitant and scared to risk it, but we better know our limits. The stock is up a lot today. If this is the top of the roller coaster looking down, then we better make sure that stop is set tight. right? So that's kind of my attitude about this trade right now. Hey, there's still a shot for this to go, but let it play nice. Even here, it's like not perfect at my horizontal line, but it's still holding a higher low. Can it try and play out later on? Now, I took this trade after the market opened up. I got in like I showed you exactly here at the 120 price. Nice cheap stock on good spread. So I felt pretty good about the share size there. OM, not so much. OM, this thing has big spread. It did in pre-market. I mean, I guess it filled in a little bit more like looking at it live now, but this thing had a pretty big 5, 8, 10 cent spread at times in the pre-market here. So because of how big the spread was, because this was pre-market, hey, we don't have our seatbelts in pre-market. We can't set our seatbelts on in pre-market. They don't let us. You got to try and make a makeshift seatbelt there, right? So because of that, I'm not trading this on big size. I ended up doing this on 250 shares. So the reason I got in on this trade, OM, well, very similar, at least in the sense of EVTX breaking the resistance at first. The more times it's poking and testing resistance, it's bound to break. So this was more from $6, I reckon. $6 as a whole number level. Let me double check. This might be more also just, if not from the regular graph, I just want to get my story straight for you here. Yeah, no, the daily chart on this was not that great. This was more or less just from seeing the Fausto flag play out and also just seeing that CVP column on Bookmap. But right around 585-ish or so, I was kind of just saying more or less it was holding pretty nicely as a level when I was first calling it out, rather, I guess. 1, 2, number of these wicks, right around 585, $6, just that generalized area put together. Then you have the CVP or SVP column. Let me switch back. There we go. So at least it tops off right around 585, 586. It's more of a mound, not really a big spike, but it kind of tops off there. Nothing really much above 586, 585. Looking at the far right side column, CVP. So I simply just used the common thought of the more times it's nipping and testing that resistance, that area, I'm expecting that reaction. Now, the thing with this stock is the fact that I was a bit goal-oriented on this trade. I was process-oriented with my entry, but I was thinking about, like, hey, this stock actually can make a move maybe up as high as like 850. There's a giant gap for it to fill from that point. But granted, there really isn't much historical data from the daily chart for me to work with here. Like if it could break the pre-market resistance, then I'm thinking there's at least a chance for this to move a hell of a lot better. So by the time I had jumped in, it was pretty much right. Whoops. It was pretty much right, I think, here. More or less, I was just hoping to see this build out with higher lows. I was likely following just level 4. 550 could have been at least a line in the sand for me there too. It's also just very tiny size, so I'm not risking big bucks since I'm trading smaller size position. Granted, with that, I'm also not shooting for the stars and trying to make my days pay on a quarter size of my normal position. It's pre-market. That's not the point of what I'm trying to do either. I'm not trying to hunt for my days pay here at this move. I'm just trying to get on the board. So, you know what? This type of move, it was more of a category 3 or 4 type of stock. Probably more of even a 4, I'd say. Like probably more of a 4. So on a quarter size position, I took it right at the 586, 585. I took half the trade out right at 635 just because we're getting close towards the market open. For any of my students I work with more in the phase 2 class, I teach a class called Intro to Pre-Market. And more or less just, quick rule I'll just say here. I try not to hold any trades going into the market open. I'm typically out by 9:10, 9:15 in the morning. So I took half my trade out there and then the second half out, not at a great price. That number is not a great price. 666 right there. But I guess it was for the better at the end of the day because, well, hey, came back down. and, take the money and run, right? You can never go broke taking a profit. I was up enough already, even if it was on quarter size position. Again, it wasn't to make my days pay. It was to get me to start to make my days pay. It was to get a cushion underneath me. It was to get a nice lead on my day. So by design, it was just accomplishing all of my goals. And I think I got out also because there was at least some sort of iceberg that popped up. Yeah, like this year, I think it was right before the market was opening. More orangish, reddish line stood out here after it had topped off. So good reason to take the money there anyway. What order do I use for a stop loss? Just real quick question in between. I do have to get to emails. I want to get to email students that took the time that wrote me just beforehand, but quick one there. I use a stop limit order, Nabil, for my stops. Not every platform has specifically stop limit and might just give you stop loss, which they might kind of deduct as like a stop market order. As long as the stock is on a good spread and has good liquidity, you probably won't be getting crushed so badly on price if you use a stop market order as opposed to stop limit. The only difference is just that you're able to try and set a slight range cushion for where you want to get your order filled with using the stop order. Stop market, if it just hits your, so to say, price, it's just going to get you filled automatically. That means if the stock keeps dropping as your order gets hit, by the time your order hits the trading floor, well, at that price is where it gets filled. So if you're using a stop market order and there's some lapse in order execution and the stock is, still dropping in like a couple microseconds of time, and well, your stop market order might actually take you out right there at that time, but it might be 5, 10, 12 cents below where you said that you wanted to get out. That's the danger with any market order. It just gets you filled right there instantly. But if there is a lapse in order execution, then you're not going to get the desired price that you want. Lengthy conversation. I'll take a little bit more time to cover, at least in our phase 2 course there. All right, so let's go through at least. The OM was a nice Fausto flag pre-market. That's kind of where I was more focused in pre-market trading. Had the thought of a gap fill, or at least to get up there, and close but no cigar. More or less, though, a couple of good trades, though, from pre-market with the OM and with the EVTV. We'll get to IREN, I think, next. We'll do that one coming up in just a bit. Let me get to some emails, though, because I want to make sure I answer questions that came in via email. Actually, I'll tell you what, one of my students here that wrote me at 11:14 Eastern time, I'm going to work with them privately coming up in coaching here, actually literally in 20 minutes. So they're my next appointment. But I just want to answer a quick question that they had sent in, and I think they meant it for Traders Talk today. So, my trader just asked, "Hi, Josh, why does the stock price of the company that is acquiring another company fall?" Meaning, when company A purchases company B, typically there is a price drop in stock A, the company that is acquiring company B, right? So my student was just kind of asking, like, why is that the case? And, for the stock price of the company being acquired, typically it goes up. Like what's the explanation for that? So think of it this way. When a company is purchasing another company, how do they do that? Like, how does a company just buy out another company? Well, they need to have the right amount of assets for it, don't they? That could be cash. That could be based on stock price, shares per price per transaction. So typically when another company is being bought out, it's because they typically see an opportunity to grow that company. Maybe the company that's being purchased fell off in value a lot before they got bought out. So there could be an opportunity to see potential growth ahead. Let's say like NVIDIA buys out some garbage company and the market says, wow, NVIDIA is buying this company out. Well, we know NVIDIA. We love NVIDIA. We see the success they have. There might start to be an overlying belief in company B again for that reason. Otherwise, it's more or less just because of the transaction that was agreed upon. if let's just use Nvidia here since while I'm at it, if Nvidia purchases company ABC out at $55 per share, well, it's gonna gap up to that price. So whatever price they agree at is where you'll just see simply the stock price go to for company B, the company that is being purchased. Now, for the company that is buying that company out, well, they're using assets to get the job done. They might be borrowing money too, like Jim says there too. Yeah, that's a fair point as well. But typically, when you're letting go of cash, when you're letting go of assets to do this, it typically has a shock to the stock price at first. Um, Now, remember, the key word to this is typically. So typically, this is what happens. This is not necessarily what happens 100% of the time. So there could be points, it's not as often, but let's say if a company purchases another one out, maybe there's like a tiny hair of a drop, but then that company just shoots up like a missile immediately after. Because it's not as if it's bad news. It's not as if people see like a bearish scenario on the company because they have enough assets to buy another company out. Clearly, they have a game plan with buying this company. So it's not bad news when that happens. It just fundamentally leads to a shock in the stock price. I will tell you, like, it's different but same, or I guess same but different. Same but different. No, but seriously, SIDU. Why does a stock price tank after there's a common stock offering or a direct offering of shares? Well, in that case, it's because they're injecting more liquidity into the stock, right? But that's not necessarily bad news for that stock. It's not necessarily like great news every time either, but that's not bad news when there's a common stock offering. There's a reason they're doing it, right? But here, though, I remember this, well, like the back of my hand. SIDU had popped. There was some news that came out then, maybe a deal that they had with another company, whatever it is. After that day was over, they came out with news of a direct offering of shares. It tanked the stock from 231 down to $1.39 overnight, like this candle. But as you could see, what was the reaction afterwards? Immediately flew back up afterwards, right? So was that common stock offering news bad long term? No. Created a great dip opportunity, right? So, just point being is that like when you see one company purchase another company or acquire another company, it's because they're spending assets and cash to do it. So it typically leads to just a small shock in stock price at first, but that could create a pretty good opportunity to buy immediately after. Sam says the buyer has to pay money, so that is an expense on their bottom line. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's actually, I think there was a second part to that email that came in from my student who I'll be working with in coaching coming up. So they're just asking, oh, no, I guess I answered it actually. They ask, is it a good time to buy this stock for the swing or the long term? Uh, Situational, but it very well can, right? Situational, but it very well can. Hey, think of it this way. If company A is purchasing company B, and let's say you look at the long-term graph of company A, and this is the long-term graph. Who's winning this battle, folks, long-term? I'm using NVIDIA here as our example of company A. If we're looking at this chart, who's winning this battle here long-term? I'm not trying to throw a curveball here to you, so I hope everyone says the same thing here. Buyers, right? I mean, just from 2023 onward. So if NVIDIA buys another company out, and because of that, it might temporarily shock the stock price for a day or a couple of days or a week, that's not bad news. If this stock is still holding higher lows, if it's flipping a resistance still into a support, then I think that there's a good shot for this to make a better move over time. And when I kind of give that clicking sound, it's because, well, in our trading room, just the end of last week, I gave you the game plan here, right? You had a resistance, and then from there, a lot of chop. There was a lot of chop there on that, 184, 185-ish area. Going back into October, November, December, it wasn't perfect for a little while, but it was perfect for a little while before that. And you got to ask, why was it so clean there? Why was that so picture perfect? So that's just where, simply put, I'd be expecting eventually in due time for that resistance to flip into a support, right? Let's see if I could even show you this here. I might still have it. I think I do. Yeah, I do. Perfect. Give me a quick moment. I'm going to actually bring this up to you right now. So I posted this picture inside our live trading room the end of last week. This is my trading view charts. Don't mind that. Resistance, chop, stubbornness, and then maybe this could finally be support, right? So it's just to tell you, this is a very, very healthy graph long term. In this sequence, it still is. Looking back here, it absolutely is. So point being is that, hey, if NVIDIA purchases some random company tomorrow and they have a tiny little drop in stock price, that's not bad. That actually could be a really good thing for a potential move up. All right. So if you have any follow-ups on that from my student that emailed me, I'm going to work with you in just a little bit. Looking forward to joining you on coaching coming up. All right. So let's keep going through the question that came in. Oh yeah. So let's go over to IREN. So let's cover IREN now. At this point, we'll kind of segue perfectly over to this move. So look at where it's at now. Also perfect. Right back over 50. So I am currently in on this trade live right now from 48.40s. 48.40s. That's where I'm at. Now, the reason that I'm still in, well, it's holding higher lows. Like just right before here, actually, it just had a little base of support. And just here, it held higher low. This has been cruising throughout the day today, right? Now, I want to go into the full move before I go into the email just for my student, because it's probably going to just cover everything, including the email that was sent to me. But I want to go over why I was talking about IREN at first. I want to go over basically, why we called it out, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so IREN was up about 4 or 5% this morning in pre-market trading. That sounds good, right? That means it's probably on the gainers list. It means that, hey, it's up for a reason. When a stock is trending up, 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 or if a stock is up X amount of percent early in the pre-market hours, I would think that the buyers are winning that battle, right? So those are good enough reasons. Now, though, I mean, for any of us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, especially you on Twitter, if you're on X right now joining me, then you may have seen this already. So every now and then, you get these like influencers and like people that are just like attention bleeps that, beg and cry for attention on social media. It's a giant look at me game. I really, a lot of noise out there, but that's a whole separate conversation for another day. There was a gentleman on Twitter that was posting a lot about IREN and basically saying that IREN in the coming days, like this week, is going to be, announcing a deal with this major AI company called Anthropic. And this whole post got a lot of steam on social media. People calling bullshit, obviously people calling BS and like, this guy knows nothing, blah, 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 blah. Hey, he probably doesn't know anything, honestly, right? It's some person on Twitter that has an account that they don't even show their face. They don't even show their thumbnail, right? Like, at least on social media, I do on my Twitter, on my X, etc. I don't have my webcam up right now just because I'm actually in New York today visiting my parents. I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment working off my laptop, but you'll get me next week there. But point being is that like you can't really trust anyone out there, especially people that don't even show their face. But listen, this post on social media is getting a lot of feedback. It was getting a lot of hype, a lot of attention from retail traders. I'll show it here, I guess. Like this is one of many posts I was trying to show you here. This is from January 10th, and some random jamoke that's just posting a bunch of news about possibly IREN and Anthropic AI and blah 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 blah. Well, hey, I'm not buying everything that I read on social media, right? But I was around for GameStop 6-7 years ago. I was around for AMC 6-7 years ago. I see a lot of the meme stock stuff. I see a lot of the stupid things on social media that actually lead a stock to make a giant run. Not everything needs to make a lot of sense logistically for you to make money on a trade. meaning like a stock could pop because of no news. A stock could pop off of rumors. A stock could pop off of some schmuck out there posting, either insider trading or maybe just some BS out there. That doesn't lead me, Josh Levitan, to jump in the trade. What leads me to jump in the trade is seeing a stock break through a big level on the way up. Correct? Now, when IREN is popping immediately to begin the morning, just instantly, like after the first, slingshot, it just up, up, up. Okay, well, much like I have you go through with me here in Traders Talk, when a stock is going up, 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 I know the buyers are winning the battle. And when the buyers are winning the battle, I need to ask, where are they winning the battle from? And that will lead me to get into the trade. So I'll kind of expedite to where I'm in from now. I took one trade before this here, and it was like profitable, but this shook down pretty quick at first. So very volatile move. So I was there on a sweet entry, but it shook me out at first, and I made some money on the trade, but it wasn't where I'm in from now. All right. So real quick, I want everyone here to kind of answer this for me. I'm just going to try and manipulate it so it's easy for you to answer. All right. Where do we see a big volume spike on the far right side of this program? On the far right side of my screen, where do we see a big old volume spike on that column CVP? $48.50, right? Deb, Sam, Bill, Uday, all of us here. Absolutely. So that is definitely a pretty big level for me. That sticks out way more than everything else in your buy, etc. After that, you got $50. So those are really the only two prices that I'm mainly concerning myself with at this point. I had one entry from $48, $48. That wasn't from Bookmap. That was more or less just from the regular old chart. Just had a little resistance Friday afternoon there, pre-market a little bit. So that became a little support here. And that's where I took my first entry. Did okay on it, but it shook down, very volatile drop. So I took less of a profit than I really wanted on it. But it wasn't until later on where this ended up pushing back up and above this, right? Push back up and above this right here as a, resistance. It broke below it as support. It dropped off a lot. Support initially should be a resistance, but the more it keeps knocking on that door, and if it could break resistance, and if it could run from it, then at the minimum, I'll say, all right, it broke above resistance and it ran. What are we looking for resistance to flip into then, folks, if that's the case? Support. So that's where I jumped in. That's where I'm in from currently. I took like partial entries on it, so I averaged into it a tiny amount, but broke under and back over. So my averaged price is right there at 48.42. I can go into where I'd set my stop at this point. I had it originally set at 48.16, right? It was like a smidge below 48.20 at first. Simply put, though, folks, I haven't asked this one yet, so may as well get it in before we finish up this workshop. 2 words. When a stock breaks through a big level and I jump in, what are we looking for shortly after? Big move. And I'm certainly hoping that big move to be up, right? If it's not a big move up, it's going to be a big move down. So, of course, it's just to tell you at least that I'm expecting a move up to this 50. I'm expecting a reaction up to this price. So I did take half my trade out, at least by the time this first went up to 50, and I still have half of it left. Now, why do I have half left? Because it's still building higher lows. And well, now as we're literally talking, it's back to 50. If this wants to make a better move later on today, who knows? You might have resistance up top at 55 or even 60 the more this keeps pumping up, 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 up. So, maybe first 51, I reckon. But hey, 50 is where we definitely had a lot more volume traded and filled across the morning here today. It's built out a lot more on the CVP column now. If this wants to keep going up today, I think that there's a great chance for it to do so. But it's very similar. It's pretty similar, at least in the sense of seeing resistance flip into support and seeing it play nice, as it was for the EVTX or EVTV trade. The difference here is that this is up 200+% at the time that we needed to see resistance flip into support. And if it's not going to build a higher low, then it's game over on that trade. This is up like 8%, not 260%. So I think that based on at least, this making an 8% move, it's made a larger move than that in one day for us. Not to say the stock always makes an 8% move every day, but hey, I think that there could still be a lot left in the gas tank for this type of stock, as opposed, well, now at this point, at least to the EVTV trade. If it's not going to make a higher high, then it's prone to making a lower high. And if it's prone to making a lower high, then there's a better chance of it making a lower low. So this was game over. The second it broke below 150, we told you, like, that's it. Game over. That's a wrap. That's sheets. That's it. But that's just where I'll say, though, IREN is not up 260%. This is actually a lot more heavily known stock. People know IREN a lot more than that other random thing. So I think that there's definitely a lot more power left in the gas tank, a lot left in the gas tank, at least for this to try and make a better move before the end of the day. All right, folks. Let me see, just go through my emails right here. So I did have that question from my student regarding this trade here. I did cover a small amount of it as far as like where I was getting in from, where I do suggest for my student and others to take the trade from. Remember, we want to focus on the biggest and the best. So we shouldn't really be having like, 8, 10, 12 different lines on our charts. Big money is here to make big money. Big money is not here to make pennies. So that's where for a stock like IREN, granted, it's more expensive. So that's where perhaps you could see some icebergs at different prices at $50 or $51, etc. But remember, though, let's just go back on the daily chart. Let's go back on the pre-market chart, go back on Bookmap. Just what looks easiest on the eyes from earlier when this was moving here, when this was shaking around at first, at least, right? From prime time hours of the morning. What sticks out? The 48.50 here, right? What orange line is out here on the Bookmap? Where do we have orange lines? There's only one price here, 50. So I'm not inclined to, at this point, enter on this trade aside from where the largest levels are really trading at. That's pretty much my stance there. All right, folks. So I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap up, at least for the time being. I got a coaching call coming on up at 1 o'clock right here on the gun. I'll tell you what, I'm up in New York right now. I'm going to be meeting the man himself for a nice lunch this afternoon. I got Fausto coming up at 1:30, 2 o'clock. I'm meeting him for a nice lunch this afternoon. So really looking forward to that, actually. I rarely see him in person nowadays. So, it's really for our Trader Summit event. I'm down in Florida now, right? So, I ran into him at the Money Show when he was in Orlando. I helped him out for that event. Our big Trader Summit event in October, we typically host for students like Debbie and Uday and a lot of us here that were with us at the end of last year. I'll tell you what, it's nice to be home, see the family, see my parents, see my nieces, see the pup. But you got to see the man himself, see Fausto coming on up this afternoon. So looking forward to that. Hey, folks, we're going to wrap up for the time being. If you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., make sure to follow us, be a friend, tell a friend, hit the subscribe and follow button down below at CyberTradingU. And then for all of us inside our live trading room, hey, our next broadcast will be at 2:30 Eastern. Rich will take you going into the afternoon meeting, and you'll be good to go with him. All right, folks, talk to you soon. Take care.